We're back on the air on Stadium. This is Red Corner, Blue Corner, the bowl preview special. Hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. I know we did, but that is my co-host Jake Butt, the Michigan Wolverine, two-time All-American Mackey Award winner.
And this is Joshua Perry, the national champion, the captain, and the All-State Good Hands Award. The season for giving. You're active in the community, man. It's good to see you again.
You are as well. It's always good. It's always good, and we're glad that you're here with us. We got a lot of games to get to, but before we do all that, we just wanted to give you the reminder. You can scan that QR code on the screen, get in that YouTube chat. You can also submit some content. We've been playing it on the show, and you can follow us as well on Instagram at @RedCorner_Blue Corner. But we're jam-packed, and we got to start with the biggest matchup here, I think, of the postseason. That is the one happening in Pasadena. You got the Big Ten champs, Michigan Wolverines, and you got the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, the Wolverines arrived in Southern California on Tuesday, ready for the granddaddy of them all. And this will be just the sixth meeting between the two storied programs. And as with every big matchup, it starts with, of course, the quarterback position. Jalen Milroe has come on strong as of late, while J.J. McCarthy's early season success has hit a little bit of a speed bump in these last few games. Now, you know we can't talk about a Big Ten SEC matchup without bringing on our guy from Rivals Down South. That is T-Bob Hebert. T-Bob, how we feeling right now?
Yo, what up, boys? I am basking in the post-Christmas glow, and then I'm looking at a Rose Bowl featuring Alabama and Michigan. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's America right there, folks. Like, that's why you work so hard, right? That's, Dad, why do you have to go to work? So that I can enjoy nice things like what we're about to get on January 1st.
Oh, it's going to be a really good one. And I think a lot of the storylines right now are centering around the quarterbacks, which I think is fair. So if I were to ask you the question, who do you trust more right now, J.J. McCarthy or Jalen Milroe? T-Bob, what would you say?
I mean, boys, we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? It is quite obviously Jalen Milroe. I mean, if you just look at, like, okay, just look, and it's because of their current form, right? As you kind of alluded to in the beginning. Look at the last 4 games for Jalen Milroe. 10 touchdowns to just 1 interception, none in the last 3. And it's not like he's not throwing the ball. I mean, he's averaging 10 yards per attempt in that stretch as well. What was the big knock on Milroe early on while Alabama struggled times? He would make really dumb errors. He seems to have taken those mistakes out of his game. And then you look at J.J. McCarthy, and I don't know what happened. I've heard maybe it's injury. Jake, you would obviously know way better than I do, but like, it feels like Michigan's just abandoned the forward pass. Some sort of Kirk Ferentz mind contagion. I mean, 4 games, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and sub 150 through the air in those 4 games.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of damning critique here is that it comes in a stretch that featured the best teams on the Michigan schedule. So stock is way down on JJ and company right now, though I'm one of the few in the South buying Michigan here.
All right, so Jake, it's time for your rebuttal here, because I'm sure you got some J.J. McCarthy defense there.
Yeah, no, I mean, T-Bob, you're right. Your logic is correct. You're spot on with the trending, and I can't acknowledge that, help but acknowledge Jalen Milroe. He's improving throughout the season. Even like the sack and pressure numbers from Alabama's offensive line, that's improved throughout the season. The whole Bama offense has improved throughout the season. But the reason I'm going with JJ and why I trust him more is, first, to start, you mentioned that he's been injured. I think this month off, he's going to be fully healthy going into this game. And that's the nature of the way JJ plays the quarterback position. He's a bit of a playmaker. He likes to create. He's almost like an artist. Being healthy allows him to play at his full potential in this game. I also think in these games, I'm going to go with the guy. We've seen this hurt Michigan in the past. I think it's going to help him in the past. JJ's the more veteran quarterback. He's the more experienced quarterback. And, throughout the season, I think he's been more consistent, though, of course, the trending doesn't help him. I'll also say this, and this is the last point I'll make. I think Michigan's offense is less dependent on JJ than Alabama's offense is dependent on Milroe. So in that sense, I understand this game. There's going to be 5 to 7 plays, I want to say, that JJ absolutely has to make. A key 3rd down, a key 4th down, creating down in the red zone. I think he'll make those plays. I also think Michigan's defense is going to make it more challenging on Jalen Milroe, and that offense is much more dependent on his success.
The one thing I would argue, though, is that to beat Alabama, the formula typically to beat Alabama would be to have a quarterback who is running the football. One thing that they have struggled with this year, and you can look at a game that they played against Auburn, you could look against LSU, the quarterback run is something that hurts them. So I would go as far as to say that the game plan should be J.J. McCarthy dependent if they want to have a chance to win this football game. I love everything else you said, though, because I do think that J.J. being healthy is going to be a game changer here. I think we all knew if you were watching the games that he wasn't himself. That's going to matter in this one. I think it really comes down to this point. Do you want an efficient quarterback? Because that's what J.J. McCarthy is going to be. He's a guy who completes a lot of his passes. He makes a really smart plays most of the time. Or are you looking for the explosive guy? Because Jalen Milroe, completion percentage might not be that high coming out of some of these games, but he might also throw it for 12 yards an attempt. It's just what he does. And I think that's kind of the give and take in this football game when it comes to the quarterbacks.
Well, and it's kind of fascinating because Milroe kind of finds that efficiency through the chunk yardage, right? Like if you look at his passer rating number, the reason why it's so high is that however much it's being dragged down by completion percentage or lack thereof, the explosivity, the yardage, the touchdowns is it's making up for it. What do y'all think about this, right? Like I keep thinking back to J.J. McCarthy in last year's game against TCU where you look at all the J.J. McCarthy career game logs, that's one of, if not the most explosive games he had. I mean, 340 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 50 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, and he had the 2 big picks, right? But it's like, I don't think you're going to stack 340 against this secondary, obviously. But if you can lean into McCarthy and allow him to play free and try to be dynamic and engage in risk in that same way, I feel like that's how maybe Michigan can look to gain edge. Because I think the Michigan defense is going to do great against this Alabama attack. It's just whether or not the Michigan offense can do enough to out-earn him.
T-Bob, you bring up a great point, and that's why I'm picking JJ here, is that they've just been kind of tuning the radio. They've been dialing it up. And last year, I think, will benefit them. You know, it took Michigan into the second half to finally say, all right, listen, we're not just going to be able to run the football. JJ, you go do what you do and play free. And once he played loose, I mean, if that was their game plan the entire game, they probably would have beaten TCU. Yeah. I think they'll benefit this year from that experience. And I also, you know, my concern for Milroe is he has to go through some of those growing pains in this big moment. I also think Michigan's defense, Bama's faced some great defenses this year, but Michigan's defense is veteran, they're experienced, the game looks slowed down to them. They're going to be able to handle and put on some spies and disguise things for Jalen Milroe to keep him contained. I think JJ's played enough football where the game will be slowed down for him.
Yeah, that's an interesting point there because I think both defenses are going to try to operate in similar ways against either of these quarterbacks, and that is to change up the pictures for them. And I agree with the fact that JJ is a more experienced quarterback, no doubt. But we've also seen, like against Maryland, he should have thrown a couple of interceptions in that game. And part of it was they were dropping guys out in simulated pressures. Jalen Milroe is going to see a ton because this Michigan defense shows a bunch of looks. And so to your point, whoever took this month to prepare as many pictures as they could for their quarterback probably has a pretty big edge.
But that's, and I know we'll move on after this, but that's the problem, right? We mentioned experience in the month to prepare, and it's Nick Saban.
That's true.
If you give him 30 days in BCS or playoff situations, he's 9-0, 11-1. If you shorten it to 13 days, I mean, it's just, I guess, JP, your team was the only one that ever done it. I mean, he's unbelievable in these scenarios.
Look, if there is a year to do it, you know, Coach Harbaugh, you knock on the door, eventually you kick it down. I mean, this has to be the year for Michigan. So we will see. And T-Bob, we're super happy to have you joining us because if this was 2024, this is basically a Big Ten versus SEC challenge in the college football playoff. Of course, in the other matchup, we have Washington versus Texas. You know, Washington goes into the Sugar Bowl as the Pac-12's last conference champion, and the Huskies are one of the 4 remaining unbeaten teams in the FBS. So let's take a look at the tail of the tape, and it's actually very similar across the board. What stands out really is how the Huskies defense has given up a lot of yards this season. This will also be the 6th meeting ever between these two schools. So T-Bob, why don't we start with you? Where do you think Texas holds the upper hand in this matchup?
I mean, I think the Texas front 7 is as feared in the entire country. And so once again, and I think that's a lot of the reasons when people are picking Texas, they're rolling with T'Vondre Sweat and company, Jalen Ford and those guys. And once again, this Washington offensive line, which just won the Joe Moore Award, right, for best offensive line in the entire country. But here we sit, and in a big game, going into a big game, they are once again being doubted, right? Like it looks because the thing is, if Washington's O-line can get the job done, Texas is weak on the back end. Like that is the weakness of this Longhorn team, and it's especially poor weakness to have when you got Dunze and company and Michael Penix Jr. lining up across from you. So to me, when Washington is on offense, everything is about whether or not that offensive line can hold up.
Yeah, it's intriguing because I feel like these teams mirror each other in a lot of ways. And to your point, I think it is going to come down to the trenches when Washington is on offense. They have a really good offensive line, but we've talked about Texas's defensive line, their linebacker group. They got guys, potential first-round picks out there on the front. And I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to have to be that guy where maybe he hasn't run the football a ton this year, but you might have to make a couple plays, extend them with your legs, maybe get some of those yards on the ground in order to win that advantage there.
Is that where you would say Washington had? I mean, because you think about it, of course, Penix was in New York for the Heisman ceremony. Yeah. Is that where you'd go, or where would you go for Washington?
The Washington advantage to me is definitely their pass game, and I'm looking squarely, as T-Bob said. This is not a good secondary for Texas. They're 94th in pass defense. This is a team that has given up a ton of yards through the air. And I understand they're playing some of those Big 12 offenses, so you can say what you want about the numbers. This is not where you want to be as a college football playoff caliber team going up against a Washington squad that has thrown the ball very well, that has protected their quarterback very well. There are going to be some guys in that secondary that are going to be hanging out there to dry. And I do want to say this about the Washington defense, too, because they've given up a ton of yards. It hasn't necessarily been great for them. I think they got better toward the end of the year when they got healthy. And they got two guys in particular that I think are game changers. Dominique Hampton, who's a safety. I think he dictates a lot of what their coverage does. I love the way that he plays. And Braylon Trice up front. Yeah. He is a pass rusher that I think is a baller. So they got a couple guys on that defense that can be problems too.
I will say this, both of the passing games are sexy. That's what we'll lead with. But one guy that has to step up for Washington is their running back, Dylan Johnson. Since November, he's had 683 yards. That's an average of 136 yards per game. Why that matters is Michael Penix off of play action, 75% completion rate, 12-0 touchdown to interception. That's a difference of 13% completion rate. So if they can run the ball, they can get into play action. All 9 of Michael Penix Jr.'s interceptions are off base pass, so not play action. Run the ball, play action. It's tough because Texas has the 4th best run defense.
And here we kind of arrive at what I perceive to be Washington's greatest advantage, beyond like just the again those weapons against that secondary, but it's the intangible advantage. There's that old Bruce Lee quote, right? Be like water. Like whatever the container water is poured into, it takes the shape of that container. That's this Washington football team. They've been adaptable, right, to whatever the situation. They won with defense when Penix and company didn't have it. They've won it when Penix needed to show up. They won it when Dylan Johnson needed to show up, when the DBs needed to show up. Where was Troy Franklin that second Oregon game? So, like, that's how you know they're so well coached by Kalen DeBoer. And make no mistake, Texas has the talent advantage, but I like Washington's intangible advantage. And the main reason why is Michael Penix Jr., man, because that is a cat who does not fear the stage. He thrives on the stage. He seeks it out. And throughout this year, whether it's been the big third down, the big touchdown, whatever it's been, whenever a play's been needed, he's there. I keep going back. There's a video of him in that first Oregon game before that game-winning drive where he's sitting there freestyling on the sidelines to his teammates about how they're going to go win the game. That is a man who is in the present, who is locked in, and who just knows how to win. So, like, that's why I actually like Washington to get this done, the intangible element pushing them over the top.
So you got Washington. I think you hinted at your pick for Michigan-Bama earlier. So who do you have in the national title game, T-Bob?
I'm going Washington, Michigan, man. I think we get all Big Ten. Now, I know that's a bit of a risky pick. I mean, betting against Saban in this scenario is really, really dumb. I keep going back to the fact that Alabama has actually looked more fallible than has Michigan this season. And so what happens? As unlikely as this is, given Saban and his days of preparation, what happens if you catch Alabama on a South Florida day, a Texas day, an Auburn day? Michigan will win that game. And I think the whole matchup is just closer in general than people are giving it credit for. So I like the 2 Big Ten teams.
Yeah, well, thanks, T-Bob, man. I know we're excited for these matchups. It's going to be such a competitive and fun Final Four, man. It's always great to have you on here. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you here soon. And you know what, JP, coming up, we should give the red corner some love, right?
I think we should.
A lot of time
We've been talking too much
corner.
about the damn blue corner.
We'll give the red corner some love and preview Ohio State's game versus Mizzou in the Cotton Bowl. That is just in a few. We'll see you on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back. And for the red corner, the Buckeyes have got to be happy. 7 juniors who all could have realistically opted out of the Cotton Bowl and got ready for the NFL draft. They've committed to playing the game, and you can see the list right there, some big-time names. But the big name is Marvin Harrison Jr. He remains a mystery. Earlier this month, he said he was still undecided about playing at least one more game with the Ohio State Buckeyes, but Harrison was absent from the Buckeyes practice on Tuesday. So take that for what you will. And with that in mind, JP, as we talk about this game, you know, we got the script. So let's write our script for this top 10 tilt between Ohio State and Missouri, starting with what team scores first?
Yeah, I got a Ohio State score early on in this game. I think that there is an idea for Ohio State that they want to be aggressive in this game. I think Ryan Day was criticized for not being aggressive enough against Michigan, and rightfully so. And so their mentality is going to be offensive design, lean into the script, and make sure that they can get on the board early. I have TreVeyon Henderson on this score as well, because everybody's talking about Schrader right now, and TreVeyon Henderson's out there prepping with the team. Really good back, not getting a ton of the headlines, and I think that he's going to want to make a statement in this game. He still hasn't made a decision yet. This could be his last one. I think if he's going to go out, he's going to go out on a high note.
I think the fact that Devin Brown can run too, just the threat when he runs that read option, even just the threat of him keeping it will help open things up. And we know with Trey Henderson, all he needs is a crease. You know, I wrote down, initially I said, I think Ohio State's going to score first, and then I second guessed myself. I would not be surprised if it takes 1 or 2 series for Devin Brown to fully settle in the game. I like the Buckeyes in this game, but I think Missouri scores first. Okay, let's go to first turnover. That could be a big deciding factor in this game. How does the first turnover happen,
It
JP?
could be a huge deciding factor, and I was thinking, you got Devin Brown in there. Could it be he puts the ball on the ground? Could it be an interception there? I think that he's going to try to play the game as clean as possible because this is an audition. I also think on the other side, Cook has been really good for a lot of the year. I think the turnover actually comes on special teams, and it's going to be the much maligned Ohio State special teams unit. A blocked punt will be the turnover that we're looking for.
Okay, I like that. We're both going to go with a bit of a unique answer. Hey, in terms of analytics, if you block a kick, block a punt, your likelihood of winning through the roof. I'm actually going to go with a turnover on downs. I think both I agree. Ohio State needs to be aggressive. I think Missouri will also match that aggressive intensity. What I see is someone getting into plus territory where it's like, we should kick a field goal. Ryan Day maybe, thinking about the Michigan game, hey, I should go for it. I think either team could go for it on 4th down and get stuffed early on by a defense. I wouldn't be surprised if a turnover on downs happens, and that leads us to the final conclusion. JP, what's your prediction for who wins and then who is going to be the bowl game MVP?
Yeah, I didn't feel great about this game when it was first announced. I think Missouri had every reason to feel confident. They wanted to be in this football game. Clearly, Ohio State had their sights set on the college football playoff, and they were left out. And so you could have had a locker room that wasn't going to be very involved, a bunch of guys who weren't committed to playing in this game. All of a sudden, instead of a whole bunch of opt-outs, you hear about everybody who wants to play in this game, the guys who are considering even coming back. And so I think Ohio State, they have the talent advantage, and now they have the buy-in as well. I'm going to go with them as a winner. And then for my MVP, how about Xavier Johnson, a guy who's been on that roster for a while? He's going to play some running back. He's going to play some wide receiver. We saw what he did a year ago against Georgia as well in that Peach Bowl. He's made some big-time plays in his career, and I think he's going to want to go out on the right note because this is his last one.
I like that pick, too, because these bowl games are where it's been the coming-out party for Jackson Smith-Njigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm also going to go with the Buckeyes. I completely agree. When this game first come out, it was a foregone conclusion for all of us. We're like, man, Missouri's going to handle business. I think Ohio State feels disrespected right now, and I think that that's a really great thing. And I think they're telling us that they believe in Devin Brown. He's going to have a phenomenal game. I almost had him as my MVP, but I'm going to go with TreVeyon Henderson for the same reasons you said early. Hey, what do you need to do when you're introducing a new quarterback? Run the football. Yeah. We know Devin Brown can run it too. That's going to open up some creases for Trey Henderson and what he can do in the pass game as well. I think they lean on him early. He gets an explosive start, which leads them to lead on him more throughout the game. Buckeyes win. Henderson's my MVP.
Yeah, the run game is something I'll be looking at in this one just in general because you have two really good backs in this game. And one of the things that happens during bowl prep is you maybe don't tackle as much as you need to.
Good point.
And either one of these backs can run out of some arm tackle, so it'll be good. I think they do get started on the ground. But there's another good game brewing, and this one is in the Peach Bowl between Penn State and Ole Miss. And ahead of that matchup, though, James Franklin did confirm that cornerback Kalen King is with the team in Atlanta. King is a projected early round pick should he decide to go pro. But others have decided to stick around and play, which is great for James Franklin.
There's a ton of different reasons for our players to get out in a different part of the country, for our staff. To play an SEC opponent that we got a ton of respect for, to play in this type of venue. I think there's a lot of reasons why this makes sense and why I think, the bowl experience is still valuable for college football and for our players.
All right, so you heard James Franklin right there. He's obviously excited to be in this bowl game. I think New Year's Six bowl games are a big deal regardless of what anybody says. And I know Ole Miss is happy to be there as well. So who would you say needs a win more in this game, Ole Miss or Penn State?
I'm going to go with Penn State. And really specifically, I'm going to go with Drew Aller. I think he needs the win above all else. But really, to me, it just both teams need the win. But at least Ole Miss has 2 ranked wins. You beat Tulane, you beat LSU earlier in the year. And I get it, Penn State beat Iowa. But really, it's been a disappointing year in a sense for Penn State because you've won all the games you were supposed to win, and then you lost the ones that you would have liked to win against Ohio State and Michigan. So I think for James Franklin, you need to get this done. And I think for Drew Aller, you really need to get this done because, look, Ole Miss is the defense isn't their strength. This is a game where he can go out there and win. You'd love to get some momentum. You got a new offensive coordinator coming in next year. You'd love for Drew Aller to put a stamp on this bowl prep and carry some momentum going forward.
Yeah, it feels like that for me, right? Like, I think it's been a tough year for Penn State because in a year when you won 10 games, people act like you won 5. And so I understand that. But I look at James Franklin. He's had 5 10-plus win seasons in a decade at Penn State, right? Like, he's had a ton of success. He's won New Year's Six bowl games before. for Lane Kiffin, he is seeking Ole Miss's first 11-win season in program history.
Wow.
He could cement himself as a bit of a legend with this victory. I think people still look at Lane Kiffin as a kind of unserious coach as well. And I think he's grown a lot from what he was in the past. And quite frankly, I think he wants to be taken very seriously on a national stage. So what a better way to do it than getting your 11th win of the season against a Big Ten opponent in a New Year's Six bowl game? I think there's a lot on the line here, specifically for Lane Kiffin, but also for the Ole Miss program.
It's a great stat. I'm a bit shocked they haven't got to 11 wins. They recruit well. They're doing a lot of great things in the transfer portal, so things are projecting good looking forward.
I'm telling you, what they've done in the portal this offseason, too, these guys are going to be nice.
It's going to be a great game.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great game.
I'm super excited. But let's talk about the Penn State players here. Confirm that some guys are going to be playing. They had the opt-out of Chop Robinson, so certainly going to miss him. But if you had to pick a player to keep an eye on for Penn State, who's that player?
You led me to it. Chop Robinson's out. That means Adisa Isaac is in. He's got to be the guy. I mean, look, he leads their team in sacks. He leads their team in tackles for loss. And whenever you're playing an explosive offense, which is what Ole Miss is, the best thing you could do is get him at the foundation. Get your best pass rusher, your best disruptor across the defensive line in the backfield. See if you can force a fumble on a quarterback hit. See if you can force some TFLs and get them going backwards. I think he needs to have a huge game.
I love that pick, and I think he's been wonderful this year. Certainly has been overshadowed because there are so many good players on that defense. But I think this is an opportunity, and if you can get after Jackson Dart, I think you can have some success against Ole Miss. But I'm going to go with a tandem here for my pick. I'm going Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. These are two guys that we said could have been the best running back room in the country at the beginning of the year. And for whatever reason, the run game just was not on point for Penn State this season. And I think in a game like this, where you know that Ole Miss is a team that can score quickly if you allow them to, in a game where your quarterback may be a little bit rusty coming off of the bowl prep as a young guy, you want to get it started with the run game. Heavy dose of run early, establish that aspect of it, get the clock on your side, and then ultimately you can have success. And I think these guys, for as much as they've gone through this year of not necessarily having their best season, why not do it in the New Year's Six bowl game?
Man, I'd love to see it. And just the more we talk about this game, the more I'm excited for this matchup, man.
This is one of the big time ones. And as we said, like, this is probably going to be a 12-team playoff type situation. Like, this would be one of those games where, you know, winner advances would be a lot on the line.
We speculated on this asset earlier, or this matchup earlier in the year anyways, right?
This is the one that we all wanted to see, so super excited. But we're going to take a break here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. And coming up, Taulia Tagovailoa won't be on the sidelines for Maryland this weekend. So do they stand a chance against the Tigers? Auburn alum Brooke Fletcher is going to help us break it all down on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Red Corner, Blue Corner. We are previewing some awesome bowl games here, and I think we all knew this was a possibility at the beginning of the season, and now here we are. This will be Brian Ferentz's last ride as the Hawkeyes OC after a historically bad year offensively. Iowa matches up against Tennessee in his final test, so now we welcome in sideline reporter from the Big Ten Network, our friend and host of the Stadium Clubhouse, Brooke Fletcher, to talk a little bit about this one. Now, Brooke, no one's really given them a chance against Tennessee, except for me. But, you know, you've had conversations with these guys throughout the year. They've had their back against the wall for a lot of the year. So what sense have you gotten from this team about what their mentality would be heading into this game?
Well, Jake and I, we had the opportunity to cover them and have an opportunity to sit down with the coaches and the players. And Kirk Ferentz, you know, he said that, listen, this team has faced a lot of adversity this season, especially when it comes to injuries and just the way that they have won. Giving a lot of credit to that defense, and the offense hasn't really existed all season long here. But they said that you have to drown out that noise. Phil Parker said that we are not where we want to be, but we are on the right track. The fact that these guys come in, day out, take pride in what they do, and that's what creates success. We talked to Jay Higgins, and he is the star of that Iowa defense there, and he said that, you know, we know that people are against us here, but we can't focus on that. We have to take one game at a time and control what we can control. And I'm sure they're keeping that mentality going up against a Tennessee team, like you said, where a lot of people are not really believing in them.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Jay Higgins, I think that's a huge spark. He just announced he'll be returning to the team next year, looking like his dad's trying to recruit some guys on Twitter. And then Tennessee without Joe Milton, right? So you're starting a true freshman quarterback. That's usually not a great recipe exactly to have a true freshman making their first start against Phil Parker's defense. They're going to have to get it done.
Yeah, and so let's look at the offense for Iowa. It's been the question that we've all had throughout the year, Jake. So do you give them any chance in this football game, and what do they have to do to get the job done?
Okay, do I give them a chance? How could I? How could I? It's just been a frustrating year, and I don't even know if that fully encapsulates it. You know, Tennessee's defense is no slouch either. I think they're about 40th in the country in total defense at this point. How can they get it done? I really don't know. I think the best offense for them is going to be special teams, and it's going to be what we just said. That defense is going to have to force some takeaways. They're going to have to force some turnovers against the freshman quarterback at Tennessee, because I just haven't seen anything to give me much confidence in the Iowa Hawkeye offense.
I am curious, though, how they're going to use Deacon Hill, because he has obviously had his struggles and inconsistencies this season, but this is an opportunity for him to establish himself as that true backup quarterback, as they're going to go with Cade McNamara next year. And also with Brian Ferentz, this being his last game as the OC, maybe he could switch things up on the play calling a little bit, maybe let loose. I don't know.
Dial it up, huh?
I don't know. Call me crazy, but maybe he could have some things up his sleeve.
I will say the former Ohio State receiver, Caleb Brown, they've been using him in a little bit of a unique way. I mean, they're good stats for an Iowa standard. I understand they're not huge stats, but he's been a nice little gadget piece that's come on down the stretch.
Yeah, I think they've got to use every gadget that they have in the playbook. I think it's got to be creative. It's got to be aggressive, to your point there, Brooke. And then in terms of the defense, I think it is an opportunity without Joe Milton in there, right? Like, we've seen them just rely on the defense to get the job done before. I don't see why they can't make this game a little bit messy and get it done right there. Now, regardless of the outcome of this football game, there's going to be at least a 10-win season for Iowa. And there's been a lot of consternation about, was it good enough? Was it pretty? 10 wins is a big deal, but now we're entering a new era in Big Ten football. So what does Iowa have to do as they advance into this new era, Jake?
They got to figure out who they want to be going forward. And you know, offensively, I get it. Kirk Ferentz I think he could benefit from changing his tone about the priority of offense. I get he doesn't get too into the weeds about offensive stats, but you're communicating to your recruits as well when you say that. I think Michigan is a good example of a more traditional, classic, throwback, run, safe, conservative offense, but they've modernized in recent years, and it's allowed them to elevate their ceiling. I don't think they need to reinvent the wheel in Iowa, but I do think they need to find an aggressive, at least a new look on offense with a new coordinator that can help them raise their floor and their ceiling.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I also think just having Cade McNamara back next year, that's going to be huge and really boost that confidence for this offense there.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily convinced that the offense has to be like totally different. I just think it needs to be somebody who can design better, who can utilize the pieces a little bit better, and ultimately who's confident in pushing the football down the field at times, because it's something that they're going to need to do. But Brooke, you're a proud Auburn alum, right?
Proud? I'm just kidding.
Well, I guess we'll see.
It just so happens your school is playing a Big Ten school in the Music City Bowl. Auburn's going to take on Maryland this weekend. So I think it's time that we break this game down with a little who has the edge.
Can I just point out the fact that this was a picture, I don't know how you guys found this because this is probably 10 years old, but yeah, that was at Auburn.
War Eagle.
War Eagle. All right, well, let's break down when Auburn has the ball here. Now, Auburn, they did announce that a lot of wide receivers, they are entering the transfer portal here, but I don't really think that's going to impact them because
they couldn't throw the damn ball all year.
Yes, I know. They relied heavily on the rushing attack, but they were pretty successful at that. Now, Maryland, they took pride in their running defense in the beginning of the season, but they really struggled down the final stretch of the season, going up against really good run offenses in Penn State. You got teams like Michigan, Rutgers, etc. there. So they also have some key players out for that defense. So with that, I'm going to go with Auburn. They have the edge.
I would tend to agree with that. And I think one of the big pieces for Maryland that's going to be out, Jayshon Barham hopped in the transfer portal, and that was a huge loss for him. He was one of the best linebackers in the conference. And to your point, ain't really a passing attack for Auburn, but they get the quarterbacks involved in that run game that always presents challenges for defenses.
Yeah, I mean, losing Jayshon Barham, that's not just the leader. Everything works from the inside out. You know, he's their leader. Really probably the best player in that front seven, so that's a big loss.
All right, well, what about when Maryland has the ball?
Well, speaking of big losses, I would go with Maryland here. But because Taulia Tagovailoa is not playing, that just completely switches things. Only by a margin, though, because, listen, Taulia Tagovailoa, he was the key for that offense, relying heavily on that passing attack there. But I'm going to have to go with Auburn here and that defense there. And Maryland, they've really struggled on 3rd and 4th downs, that offense, and that has been something that Auburn's defense has really excelled at this season. So I'm giving them the edge slightly here.
Yeah, it was always going to be a little bit of a question for me about Maryland, even if Taulia played in that game, because he has a penchant for giving the football to the other team. It's not the thing that you want your quarterback to do, but Brooke, to your point, he is a catalyst. He is a guy who makes that thing go. He's a person that people trust. So I don't know if it's going to be Billy Edwards stepping in that role, but if it is, he's going to have some big shoes to fill, and I feel like it might be a lot to overcome for Maryland.
And even if that's the case, Billy Edwards, if you didn't like Taulia, Billy Edwards is not even completing 50% of his passes this year.
Tough. Yeah. But I mean, he's good on the tush push, though.
Maybe they just run it all the way down the field at this point, you know?
It's true. And they have struggled up front defensively for Auburn there.
So let's talk about the coaches. You got Mike Locksley, who's a little bit more of a veteran guy at Maryland. You got Hugh Freeze there in year 1 at Auburn. It's a pretty good coaching matchup. What do you think?
I'm going to have to go with Mike Locksley here. Now, I want to give Hugh Freeze some credit because he has done very well in postseason as far as bowl games go. He has a lot of success, but so has Mike Locksley, especially there at Maryland. He's won the last two games, bowl games, I mean. So I'm going to have to give the edge to Mike Locksley. Something obviously clicks for them in the bowl game, so I'm going to have to go with him.
You know, this is an interesting one for me. I think Mike Locksley is a hell of a ball coach. I think he knows how to connect with that locker room. I think he knows how to communicate. Throughout the regular season, one of the things that they always have issues with is penalties, turnovers, sloppy football, and he's been trying to coach it out of them. You know what you typically see in the postseason? Penalties, turnovers, sloppy football. We watched 2 bowl games last night, Texas State and Rice, sloppy games, Kansas and UNLV, a bunch of penalties, sloppy games. And I think that leans into the thing that Mike Locksley has struggled with the most. Hugh Freeze, on the other hand, I think he's a really good ball coach, so I actually would give the edge to Auburn.
Ooh, okay, you're the deciding factor, Jake.
Yeah, for every reason you just said, Joshua. I mean, the only thing that could help Maryland in this case and Coach Locksley is maybe the month off and the fact that you don't have Taulia under center. Maybe you put extra priority and it helps the guys focus. But I know they've been emphasizing it all year. I heard Coach Locksley say clock management guys all year, and then they went and made the same mistakes. So I'm going to have to go with Auburn.
All right.
All right.
Okay, and then finally, more to prove in this ball game.
Okay, I'm going to have to go with Auburn and Hugh Freeze here. This is something that that Auburn really needs to win here because over the last few seasons, they just can't find their identity. They're inconsistent. Nobody knows who this Auburn program is. But if they can make a statement here, win this bowl game, then it will really set the tone for Hugh Freeze and his tenure as the head coach at Auburn in the direction of where this program needs to go. So especially losing to Alabama and losing the last 2 games of the season and also against Georgia, they have to get this one.
Okay, I'm going to go the other way. Maryland is a team that did no win October. I've never heard of somebody doing that, but Maryland decided that's what they wanted to do this year. I also think that anytime a Big Ten team goes up against an SEC team, there's always something to prove because the narratives are out there. The Big Ten guys can't run the same as the SEC guys. They're not as physical as the SEC guys. And quite frankly, all the championships have been in the South. So the SEC deserves its credit. So I think when you're Maryland going into this game, you got a little something extra to prove.
Yeah, and I agree with you, JP. I'm gonna break up the tiebreaker and go with Maryland here because you think about expectations. That's a huge piece of coaching to me. And going into this year, Coach Locksley talked about wanting to compete for championships. They're undefeated on the road in Columbus. That was what set the no-win October, November, all the whole thing. They struggled down the stretch of the season. Locksley just signed an extension. Boy, does he need a win here to put a bow on the year.
Yeah, I think he definitely needs one. But Brooke, this was really good stuff, and we'll keep you around, catch up with you in just a little bit.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Well, coming up, no Jaden Daniels for LSU. Does that mean a win for Wisconsin? We'll let you know what kind of impact the Heisman absence will have on this matchup. That and so much more coming up.
Welcome back. Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels has opted out of LSU's bowl game against Wisconsin. But despite his absence, the Tigers are still double-digit favorites, according to Vegas. We all know Vegas knows, JP, right? So no Jaden Daniels. Does this mean, in your eyes, advantage goes to Wisconsin?
No, absolutely not. And Wisconsin, I feel like, needs to get a win like this, I think, to really cement year one under Luke Fickell, because I think in some ways they probably fell short of expectations. Jaden Daniels was not the only reason why that offense was good. And
Exactly.
I think that he was a big reason why. Let's be perfectly clear about that. Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. But I just go back to last year, and I'm watching LSU playing in the conference championship game against Georgia for the SEC. And Garrett Nussmeier goes in there, and dude's spinning the ball all around the field, had like 300 passing yards, throwing it for 10 yards an attempt, a couple of touchdowns. I think they got another guy sitting back there who can go out there and make some plays with his arm, and I think it's going to be a challenge for this Wisconsin defense that has struggled at times, and quite frankly, an offense that I don't know if it has enough firepower to take advantage of an LSU defense that frankly stinks.
I mean, you just laid it all out there, right? And you know, when guys win the Heisman, like the great ones, they say, listen, this is a team award, and they're completely right. You know, Jayden Daniels can put up those numbers, and that can be true, and he's a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal player, one of one, truly. But you also have to acknowledge, you need some help around you to put up those numbers, too. You need a great system around you to put up those numbers as well. So I know he's not playing, but every reason you just said there, JP, the system is still phenomenal and the talent around him is still great. And Wisconsin defense has struggled. Wisconsin is a program in transition. LSU is a little bit further down their path. And what you would really love to see here, you know, when you're playing an explosive offense is, you know, Wisconsin should be able to run the football and take that away. Well, we know Chez Mellusi's injured. Braylon Allen's not playing. The challenge here is, how do they control the clock? How do they keep that offense off the field?
Yeah, I don't know. That's going to be one of the bigger challenges there. And I look at the LSU offense too. The one thing that might be a little bit of a challenge for them is their offensive coordinator, and Mike Denbrock left to go back to Notre Dame. He was there with Brian Kelly. And so maybe there is a little bit of game planning that didn't get completed before he left to take that Notre Dame job. So maybe, just maybe it's a little bit disjointed considering a new quarterback, new coordinator. But I look at this team as far more talented, and I think they also have a head coach who the players respect. They'll go out there and play well.
Real quick, so let's just talk about the Wisconsin offense. Do you have any expectations for Phil Longo and what they're dealing with the Badgers?
No.
Yeah, no.
And like Phil Longo, I've always said this too, it's two things about him. Is number one, I think we need to stop calling the offense an air raid. I think it's more of an air run offense. I think Luke Fickell wants to be a guy who runs the football. I think Longo has done a really good job when he's had the personnel to run the football. That's number one. Number two, this was always going to be a work in progress. This was always going to be a work in progress because it is so radically different than what they had done in the past on offense. You're going from pro-style type formations where, their play action is the pass game and it's all based off of the run, to now the run game is a feature, but it's definitely the pass game is used as an extension of the run, and the formations look different. It'll be a challenge for them for sure.
LSU lost to Alabama. LSU lost to Ole Miss. In those games, they gave up 288 yards and 317 yards. Now, I called Wisconsin, Indiana, where they were without Chez Mellusi and Braylon Allen. So they had Jackson Aker and Cade Yakimelli, converted fullback. They don't have the I love those guys. They're tough as nails. They don't have the explosion to take advantage of this LSU defense.
I like the way Aker run, though.
He's not dancing around you, that's for sure. He's going to run right through you. But in this game, you'd love to get some yards. So it is going to be a challenging day. Okay, there is one last Big Ten Bowl we have not talked about, so let's get to it. And that is the Pinstripe Bowl between Rutgers and Miami. The Scarlet Knights stumbled their way to the postseason, ending the year with 4 straight losses. I mean, JP, with that in mind, can you give me one reason why Rutgers wins this game?
Yeah, I think because Greg Schiano is a better coach than Mario Cristobal, and this is a team that will execute like the better coach team.
Yeah.
I think that's flat out the difference in this one. Miami's got the stars. They had paid for a lot of that roster. They have very talented players, and that is all apparent to me. I look at what Greg Schiano has built there in Piscataway. He has guys that believe in him. He has guys that believe in one another. Me and you talk about watching the game tape of them playing offensively, physical, defensively, physical. They want to punish you. They don't make dumb mistakes. They do not do things to hurt themselves. They value special teams and try to find an edge in the game doing that. And to me, I think when you have the time off to prepare for a game, sometimes when you're talking about a game like this where talent maybe isn't equated, but it's not too far out of whack, a lot of it does come down to who is the better ball coach and who can prepare and motivate their team better. And I fully believe in Greg Schiano to get that job done.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And let's not forget the Pinstripe Bowl. Where's that being played?
In their backyard?
In their backyard. So first, you got to defend your home turf, basically, right? But it's also up north. And what do we know this time of year up north? It's not going to be sunshine and roses, right? So, hey, you got to be able to run the football. You got to be able to play physical defense. That's exactly what Rutgers wants to do. The program's heading in a great direction right now. You extended Schiano. The defense has been phenomenal and lights out all year. You got Kyle Monangai back. That all all bodes well for their chances in this game. And I completely agree, JP. The more disciplined team, the better coach team will win this game. And that's why I'm betting on Schiano.
They had a lot of guys coming back, too. A lot of announcements coming out of that Rutgers locker room of guys that wanted to be a part of that program for one more year. In Miami, it feels like the foundation that they're built off of is a little bit different, where they're trying to entice guys with the bag. And Greg is doing it from the we care about you and we will develop you standpoint. And I believe in that model more than what Miami's doing right now.
That counts for something, and I think it counts for something, especially in these bowl game matchups.
No doubt. But we are going to take another break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, and we'll get you caught up on our confidence pool picks here, find out who's at the top and who has a lot of zeros next to their name. That's in just a bit. And be sure to check out the HBCU Pigskin Showdown right here on Stadium. Watch some of the brightest college football stars from historically black colleges and universities as they face off on one field. It all goes down on December 30th at 3:30 Eastern, streaming for free on Stadium. Red Corner, Blue Corner, bowl preview special. And we got Brooke Fletcher back here with us now. Before we get to her, we got to talk about the confidence pool right now. Our guy Sam Brief does it every damn time. This dude is like perfect on the season on picks. He's 3-0 so far in the lead with 22 points. Jake and Brooke are tied, although the records are flipped. Jake has gotten 2 right. Brooke, you've only got 1. Now, I am 1-2 as well with my little 9 right there. Thank you, UCLA, and the staff sucks. So let's just get that all out in the open. They are in the basement. We should get them a trophy for that. If you watch some of the other programming here on Stadium, you would know exactly what that means. But we all had on our confidence picks Oregon as a winner over Liberty in their bowl game. We put 13 on that, the most amount of points. Everybody did. Are we fearful at all that there might be a letdown from the Ducks?
I mean, okay, they do have some of their key guys out on both sides of the ball there, but you have Bo Nix. He's a Heisman finalist under center. And they're going up against a team. You got to give credit to Liberty and what they've been able to do here. But as far as strength of schedule and where these two teams are, you have to give all the credit to Oregon. This was a team that was possibly going to be in the college football playoff. I am not worried about Oregon in this game.
I hope I'm not worried about Oregon in this game either, right? I mean, shoot. I mean, we look. Oregon has one struggle this year, and it's Washington.
Yeah.
Liberty is not Washington.
Yeah.
This team, I get it, there's players out, but, they're still a team. We've talked about it all year. We felt this is one of the best teams in college football.
Yep.
That's going to win in this situation.
And I think Sam Brief actually had Oregon at a 12, and he had Tennessee at a 13. So I just wanted to put that out there in the universe for when these games come out. I'm there with you. And quite frankly, since we all had them so high on the pool, like if they lose, none of us are getting the points
That's
anyway,
exactly
so it doesn't
right.
matter.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But I want to talk about the semifinal games, and I think we all had them very low on our confidence. I had a little bit more confidence in Texas getting a win over Washington, but that was kind of a personal thing about the way I was looking at the game at that point. Why were these games so hard to decide when you started looking at the matchups?
I mean, first off, why they're so hard to decide is why this is going to be such a fun playoff.
Yeah.
These teams are almost like mirror images of each other.
Yeah.
We were talking about Texas, Washington. The numbers are almost spot on. Alabama, Michigan, those are mirror images of teams. Look, these are just four great football teams. You can make the case for any direction in which this can go. And for those reasons, man, I'm excited to tune in and watch.
No, I'm glad that we're not very confident in these games, right? And so I think it's just going to come down to, mistakes,
Right.
Who's good, the turnover battle,
Right.
And I think with Alabama and Michigan in the trenches. So it's going to be a battle for both of those games. I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really difficult when you started digging into what those games would look like, the semifinal games. And I think this is one of the first years that we've had, or maybe even the first year, where we could make a legitimate argument, a legitimate path for any of the teams to win that are in the college football playoff. That's why it was so difficult to decide.
Yeah.
But we're getting low on time here, so I'll ask you all real quick. Who do you have playing in the national title game?
I got Michigan and I got Texas. And Michigan, this is because it's a toss-up. The deciding factor for me is my heart. I do think
That's okay. Go with your
Jim
heart,
Harbaugh is
Jake.
going to break through the ceiling here. And I'm a little bit more nervous about the Texas one because I've doubted Washington time and time again, and they continually prove me wrong. I just can't wait to see them.
I think regardless of how this goes, Texas is back, everybody. So
Okay.
Texas fans, you are excited about that. I'm going to go with Washington and Alabama. I'm sorry, Jake. It's going to be a close game, though. We'll see if the Wolverines can prove me wrong.
And the script writers picked mine for me. I got Alabama, I got Texas. It's going to be a rematch from what we saw in week 2 of the college football season. But that'll do it for us right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. And we'll see y'all later on. Jake Butt, Brooke Fletcher, Joshua Perry.